I gotta keep it so 100. I ain't never like you, cuz. I ain't gonna lie, I ain't never like your ass. I ain't never liked you, cuz. You know I ain't like you. In the street wise, like we ain't gonna talk about that on here though.
Moving over, flying on the E-way, and you know we bumping, breaking new. Big MC2, bitch, I'm sliding, Mr. What to do? Look, I ain't gonna screw. Now I'm smiling when you drink the 2-3 with the draw like LeBron.
When I was hustling, I always was playing Memphis rappers. I felt like they had such an underground scene. That's what I gravitated to. Like the most gutter music is what I want to hear.
Police and prosecutors say Pooh Shiesty was part of the group that ended up in this parking lot that October afternoon where the shots flew, and it happened right across the street from the police department and town hall here in Bay Harbor Islands.
What happens when a real street dynasty raises the next generation? When your father's name carries weight in every block of Memphis, known as Mob Boss, a man who built his own record label while running trap spots all over the city, your destiny ain't like everyone else's. The Williams family, better known across Memphis as the Shiesty clan, wasn't built on fame alone. Their name was carved out of blood, loyalty, and decades of surviving the streets. This wasn't some ordinary family. When the youngest son, Pooh Shiesty, started rapping about sliding on enemies and robbing ops, he wasn't making stories up. He was telling the truth about the life he came from. His verses were like pages straight out of his family history, a legacy passed down from his father's rise as one of Memphis's most feared kingpins, to his tough-as-nails mother who stood by him through every raid, every heartbreak, and every tragedy, including the painful loss of T.P. From street wars that left bodies on the pavement to federal cases that tore their empire apart, the Williams family story runs deep. It's not just a tale about crime, it's about survival, loyalty, and what happens when the only world you know is the one that raised you. By the end of this story, you'll see why Pooh Shiesty never really had a choice. He became a product of his environment, molded by the same streets that made, and nearly destroyed, his entire bloodline. The Shiesty roots reach far and deep, stretching through every block of South Memphis. Each branch of that family tree connects to old money, lost friends, and street power. This isn't just another rapper comes from the hood story. This is the real deal, an unfiltered look at one of hip-hop's most authentic voices. And trust me, what you're about to hear is wilder than any track Pooh ever recorded. Before diving into the Williams saga, you gotta understand the world that shaped them. Memphis, Tennessee, especially South Memphis, isn't just another tough neighborhood. It's a battlefield. The city's murder rate runs 7 times higher than the national average, with over 100 gangs operating within a population barely over 500,000. Imagine that. Nearly 14,000 confirmed gang members spread across the city like soldiers, each side holding down their turf with pride and fear. South Memphis, where the Williams family claimed their ground, stretches from Midtown down to the Mississippi state line. It's one of the oldest, poorest, and most dangerous parts of the city, where life expectancy can drop by 20 years just based on your zip code. This same soil produced rap legends like Yo Gotti, Young Dolph, and Moneybagg Yo, but it also produced families like the Shiesties, who learned that survival meant staying 10 steps ahead of danger, no matter the cost. Memphis isn't just another dot on the map. It's a crossroads of chaos and opportunity. The city sits right where Tennessee, Arkansas, and Mississippi collide, making it a perfect hub for anyone bold enough to play the interstate game. The I-55 corridor runs straight through the heart of Memphis, connecting Chicago to New Orleans, a gold mine route for anyone moving serious product. For the Williams family, this highway wasn't just a road, it was a lifeline. If you were smart, ruthless, and connected, it could turn poverty into power fast. But Memphis has its own kind of gang culture, wild, layered, and unpredictable. Unlike other cities run by 1 or 2 main crews, Memphis is like a chessboard full of kings. Bloods, Crips, gangster disciples, vice lords, all operating side by side with smaller neighborhood sets that hold their own territory. It's a constant shuffle of alliances and betrayals. One day's partner could be tomorrow's target, and that's exactly the kind of chaos the Williams family grew up in. Now in the middle of all this madness stood one man, Trell Williams Sr., better known across the blocks as Mob Boss. By the late 90s, he was already a known player in South Memphis, moving different, thinking bigger, and stacking power. But every king needs a queen, and fate brought him face to face with a woman cut from the same cloth, the one who would later become Pooh Shiesty's mother. They didn't meet in no fancy club or soft love story moment. They crossed paths in the trenches. Both had grown up in the same unforgiving streets where loyalty was rare and weakness meant death. She wasn't no naive woman blinded by fast money. She already knew the game. Their connection wasn't built on flowers or sweet talk. It was built on respect, strategy, and a shared mission: survival. The two of them set up shop deep in the Cane Creek projects, right in the heart of South Memphis, a place where every building had a story and every corner could turn deadly. This wasn't a fairy tale, it was a war zone, and together they built an empire brick by brick. They faced everything from federal investigations to rival crews trying to test their turf, and every single day was a gamble with fate. But through all that pressure, their vision stayed clear. They didn't want the streets to define them forever. Mob Boss dreamed of something bigger, something that could outlive the hustle. He wasn't just chasing money, he was building a legacy. That's why he created Mob Ties Records, an independent label that served as both a business and a brilliant cover. Music gave him an excuse to travel, to move cash, and to look legitimate, while still keeping his real operations running behind the scenes. That's what made Mob Boss dangerous. He wasn't just muscle, he had brains. He understood that the key to staying in the game wasn't being the loudest, but being the smartest. While other dealers flaunted their money and drew attention, he played the long game, building an empire that blended street power with business sense. By the time Pooh Shiesty was born, the blueprint was already written. His parents weren't just hustlers, they were architects of survival, designing a life that balanced danger with ambition. Their empire wasn't just made of bricks and cash. It was built from blood, loyalty, and a dream to rise above the city that tried to bury them. To understand Pooh Shiesty, you gotta understand his father. Mob Boss wasn't some local hustler chasing quick money. He was a strategist with real ambition. While most dealers were busy flashing jewelry and wasting cash on club nights, Mob Boss was thinking long-term. He ran his crew like a corporation, structuring his operation from the top down with precision. Every move had a reason, every dollar had a purpose, and every soldier in his circle knew their role. His street network reached from the Mississippi Delta to the Arkansas border, using the I-55 interstate as his personal money pipeline. He had truck drivers who could move weight across state lines without a trace, and even a few insiders who could tip him off if the feds started watching too close. This man wasn't guessing, he was planning, calculating, always staying 2 steps ahead. Mob Boss ran the streets with the mindset of a CEO. He knew that the biggest downfall of most hustlers wasn't just the drugs, it was their ego. They got too loud, too flashy, too careless. But not him. He didn't need to show off. His respect spoke for itself. He invested in real estate, using rundown houses across South Memphis as stash spots and meeting points. He opened small businesses that could explain the money flowing through his hands, giving him the image of a self-made man while he quietly stacked serious profits in the background. But no matter how smart the strategy, no one plays the game forever without risk. By 2004, Mob Boss's empire collided with one of the most shocking cases Memphis had ever seen: the Rebecca Glenn murder. Rebecca was a 24-year-old radio DJ at Q107.5, found strangled inside her apartment. The killer, a man named Stanley Andrews, was caught, but police also charged Mob Boss as an accessory after the fact. That's when rumors started flying through the city. People whispered that Rebecca had been playing Yo Gotti's tracks but refused to give airplay to Mob Boss or his Mob Ties artists. In a city where radio play meant power, that kind of disrespect didn't sit well with people trying to break into the game. Some in Memphis claimed Mob Boss had something to do with what happened, though that was never proven in court. Still, the streets were buzzing, and his name was suddenly attached to something way darker than money and music. What we do know is that after the murder, Mob Boss and a woman named Marquita Thomas got caught using Rebecca's credit cards and selling her stolen belongings. The case exploded across Memphis news. Stanley Andrews' own sister told reporters that he'd called her from jail saying Rebecca had gone off on him, and he just snapped. But the police made it clear. He knew exactly what he was doing. When the truth came out, the story shook the entire city. Andrews had slipped past security, knocked on random apartment doors, and when Rebecca answered, he forced his way in and killed her before robbing the place. Mob Boss ended up with accessory and forgery charges, but somehow managed to beat the worst of it, walking away with only 1 year of supervised probation. That light sentence should have been a second chance, a wake-up call, but the streets don't forgive and they don't forget. Once you're in deep, the money, the fear, and the power pull you back in like a magnet. For Mob Boss, that taste of freedom only reminded him of how much more he could lose and how much more he wanted to win. By 2007, Mob Boss wasn't just back. He was operating on a whole new level. He'd turned his empire into a silent machine that ran smoother than ever. But the thing about running an empire, the bigger it gets, the louder it echoes in the wrong ears. The Memphis Police Department had their eyes on him, and they were patient, watching every move, every car, every stranger stepping through his doors. Mob Boss had built his latest operation out of an apartment on 784 Porter Street, a spot that looked so abandoned it was practically invisible. To the untrained eye, it was just another crumbling building in a forgotten neighborhood. But behind those busted windows, business was booming. Porter Street was a dead-end road with little police traffic and neighbors who minded their own business. It was perfect, a fortress disguised as a ghost house. For months, detectives kept watch from a distance. They logged license plates, filmed visitors, and mapped out patterns. Cars pulling up at all hours, quick in and out exchanges, the unmistakable rhythm of a full-scale trap operation. But what they eventually uncovered was way beyond street-level hustle. This was a distribution center, a drug lab, and a money hub all in one. Then came the night everything exploded. Officers kicked in the door and pure chaos erupted. Mob Boss's cousin, Rico Johnson, tried to make a run for it. Glass shattered, people screamed, someone dove through a window, and out of nowhere, a 75-pound pit bull charged straight at the officers, teeth bared, ready to protect the house with its life. Detective Kittrell Robinson had no choice but to fire. 3 shots rang out before the dog retreated and died in the kitchen. That pit bull wasn't just a pet, it was part of the security system. In Mob Boss's world, even the animals were trained soldiers. When the smoke cleared, what police found inside left them stunned. This wasn't some half-baked setup. They found 12.5 grams of cocaine, 8 pounds of premium weed, digital scales on the counter, measuring cups by the stove, and a Smith & Wesson sitting on the couch. And to top it off, Mob Boss himself had $10,000 cash in his front pocket when they cuffed him. It was clear. This was a professional-grade operation designed for mass production and quick turnover. Investigators noted that the setup showed real knowledge of chemistry and efficiency. They weren't just selling drugs, they were processing and packaging them with precision. Crack, cocaine, weed, all ready for the market. The digital scales were commercial grade, and the equipment looked more like a lab than a trap house. Multiple exits, reinforced doors, and cameras hidden around the block to spot anyone approaching. This was the kind of setup that could only come from someone who had learned how to outthink the system. But no matter how sharp you are, the streets always find a way to turn on you. When the feds got those photos, those witness statements, and that evidence, Mob Boss's luck finally started running thin. The Porter Street raid marked the end of an era for the Williams Empire. The city finally saw what kind of machine Mob Boss had built, something bigger, smarter, and more organized than anyone had realized. But as the headlines screamed his name, his family's reputation was on the line. And while the kingpin was facing charges, the queen of the house was stepping into the spotlight. While Mob Boss was fighting his charges and watching the empire shake, Pooh Shiesty's mother was out here proving that strength isn't just a man's trait, it's in her blood too. She wasn't some quiet woman waiting by the phone while her man handled business. Nah, she was right in the middle of it all, calculating, commanding, and keeping everything moving. In the streets of Memphis, weakness gets you crushed, and she made sure nobody ever saw her break. When Mob Boss got hit with those federal cases, she became the backbone of the operation. She handled the money, made the calls, and kept communication flowing between the family's loyal soldiers. She knew exactly who to trust and who to watch, and she never let emotions cloud her decisions. While most people crumble under that kind of pressure, she stood tall, running things with the same precision her man built his empire on. She had street smarts sharper than most hustlers out there. Growing up in South Memphis, she'd already seen what happened to women who couldn't hold their own. She watched mothers bury their sons, wives get betrayed by the same men who swore to protect them, and families fall apart over pride and money. She promised herself that would never be her story. Her name carried weight not because of who she was with, but because of what she'd done on her own. Even when the feds were watching, she kept the Williams name solid. She made sure the organization stayed alive, that the crew didn't scatter, and that the streets knew they were still in business. Anyone thinking the empire had gone soft while Mob Boss was down learned real quick. They were still active, still dangerous, and still ready to defend their name. During those years, young Pooh Shiesty was growing up under her watchful eye, taking notes without even realizing it. Every move she made taught him about loyalty, respect, and composure under pressure. She made sure he saw both sides of the game, the business, the discipline, and the danger. Her lessons were simple but powerful. Never show fear, never fold, and always protect your name. Even while juggling the streets, she cared about her kids' education. She told Pooh straight, the streets were just a stepping stone, not a finish line. She wanted him to dream bigger, but she also knew he needed to understand the reality of their world. That balance between ambition and survival became the foundation of who he'd grow up to be. And while everyone else saw her as mob boss's woman, those who really knew the game understood she wasn't behind him, she was beside him. When enemies tried to test the family, she was the one who handled it. When decisions had to be made about money, movement, or retaliation, she had the final word. Her leadership was quiet but powerful, and every major player in Memphis respected her presence. By the time Mob Boss was serving his time, the Williams empire didn't just survive, it evolved. The respect she earned became a shield that protected her children and kept the Shiesty name alive through the storm. Before Pooh Shiesty became the voice of the streets, there was another Williams who had the city's full attention. TDP, the older brother, the one everyone believed was next in line to run the family legacy. To the world, he was smooth, smart, and fearless, a natural-born leader with a sharp mind for both the hustle and the hustle's exit plan. To Pooh, though, TDP wasn't just his brother. He was his idol, his teacher, his blueprint for how to move in a city built on danger. TDP had everything that made a Williams special: the confidence, the street sense, the loyalty, and that quiet authority that made people listen when he spoke. Even at a young age, he showed that he wasn't just about fast money or reputation. He thought like his father, but moved like a new generation. While Mob Boss had built his empire through product and power, TDP understood the next phase: diversification. He knew the future wasn't just in drugs or the streets, but in music, business, and legacy. He started getting involved with Chopper Gang, helping them organize, strategize, and expand. He wasn't just another member. He was the one giving structure to chaos, turning wild energy into profit and protection. Under TDP's influence, the crew got smarter, smoother, and more connected. He was the type of guy who could talk to rival crews one minute and negotiate business deals the next, and both sides respected him. But no matter how wise or respected you are, life in Memphis always finds a way to remind you how fragile everything really is. For TDP, that reminder came out of nowhere. He was diagnosed with brain cancer, and it hit the entire family like a gut punch. You can prepare for enemies, you can watch for snitches, but you can't fight your own body. This was a war they couldn't win with street smarts or muscle. When the doctors gave the news, the family was crushed. Pooh Shiesty, still young and hungry, couldn't believe it. His brother, the person he looked up to the most, was facing something no one could protect him from. The same man who had once guided the streets was suddenly fighting for his life, and that battle changed everything inside the Williams home. TDP faced the diagnosis like he faced everything, with strength and calm. He didn't complain, didn't back down, didn't lose his pride. Even while going through treatments, he kept his focus, making sure Pooh and the rest of the family stayed sharp. People around him said he had that unshakable energy, like he already knew his name would live forever no matter what happened. His illness became a turning point. The streets went quiet for a moment because everyone who knew TDP respected his fight. His friends visited, his rivals spoke his name with respect, and his family clung to hope. But deep down, they all felt it. Something was shifting. The Shiesty legacy was about to change direction, and Pooh was standing right at the crossroads, watching his big brother fade while trying to figure out what came next. The city loved him for it. Memphis saw Pooh Shiesty as one of their own, a product of their struggle, a reflection of everything real. But deep down, those same streets that raised him were also waiting, because no one escapes their past completely. The same code that taught him loyalty and respect was also the same one that demanded payback, control, and dominance. By the time Pooh's career exploded nationally, the world saw the rapper, but Memphis saw the son of Mob Boss, the heir to a name that carried both power and pain. His music, his attitude, his rise, it was all part of the Williams legacy continuing in a new form. Pooh Shiesty didn't become who he is by accident. He was shaped, tested, and forged by generations of survival. His story isn't just about rap or fame. It's about family, loyalty, and fate. Because when your last name is Williams and your bloodline runs through South Memphis, you don't get to choose your destiny. You live it no matter the cost.